Hello, ready to start Module 3 here. I'm kind of looking forward to Module 3 just because I really like the topic. The topic of Module 3 is sportsmanship, and I think um, all of the coaches in this class, which is pretty much everybody, um, will probably really enjoy this section, I think, because I think we all deal with sportsmanship so much with the athletes that we coach and just how we're going to approach that ourselves. It's just a topic I think a lot of us spend time with. So there's a lot that we can apply to our thinking on this just from the practical sense in all of the sporting events that go on every day. And I hope to tap into that a little bit. I'm going to take a little bit different approach with this one. I'm just going to do a real quick rundown of the chapter readings, and then I'm going to focus a little bit on a specific sporting event that was in the news recently, and a few thoughts about that. So, yeah, 4 chapters to read for this. One chapter. The first one, chapter 6, is by Keating, and Keating takes kind of an interesting slant on sportsmanship and makes the argument that there's a difference when you're talking about sportsmanship for what he refers to as like a sportsman versus athletics. And basically what he's getting at there is there's some sports that are serious and then there's others that aren't. And, one of the differences is that in athletics, you're just way more serious about the rules and applying them and all of that type of thing. And his argument is that sportsmanship applies differently in those two. The next chapter 7 is kind of a refutation or argument against Keating by Feazell. And he kind of takes the slant that there's not two different types of sports that you apply sportsmanship to differently. He makes the argument that sportsmanship is necessary in every type of sporting event, and he kind of takes the argument that the terms he used that stood out to me is serious and non-serious. There's a serious and non-serious aspect always to sport. And he argues that having sportsmanship and being a good sport is essential no matter what level you're playing, or what type of sport it is. The next chapter is written by Borg, and he focuses on this whole incident of Maradona in the World Cup soccer and what they call the hand of God, where he put in a goal that was a handball and it didn't get called. And so this is a well-known incident that has been used often to talk about sportsmanship and ethics in sports. But he kind of takes a little bit of a similar slant to Keating in the sense that he argues that there's a distinction between what he calls a sportsman and athletics. And things like the World Cup or professional sports would be considered athletics. And his argument there is basically boils down to the ultimate goal is to win. So you're not, as long as you follow the rules, you're not required to go beyond that. And his distinction is kind of along the lines of if there's referees. So basically, if there's referees in the sport and they make calls that are incorrect, you don't have any moral obligation to help the referee out because that's their job. And that's kind of his argument. And then the last chapter is on gamesmanship, and that one kind of takes a slant that on the whole, the author argues that gamesmanship really is not in line with good sportsmanship. But he does give a little bit of a caveat in the sense that he makes the argument that some gamesmanship adds to bringing out excellence and some takes away from that. So that's kind of his criteria. Actually, I feel like he makes a really good argument there, and it'll be kind of interesting to see what the rest of you think about that. But I'm going to put something on the discussion board that's related to that one. I wasn't a huge fan of the Borg article about the Hand of God one, and I'm not trying to slant anybody's view of that one, but when you read it, you probably will understand where I'm coming from there. But the other three chapters I think are really good, and the Borg one is thought provoking also. So yeah, hope you enjoy the reading for this week. Like I said, I wanted to focus a little bit differently on this video for this particular chapter, and I thought the timing last weekend of the U.S. Open and what happened there with Serena Williams was pretty good as far as us covering sportsmanship. If there's any of you who didn't catch any of that story, I put a video that kind of gives the highlights of that U.S. Open up, and I'll post that right underneath this video. And if you're not familiar with it, I would encourage you to watch that. It's about 7 or 8 minutes long, and it kind of covers, all of the things that happened, especially with kind of the controversial calls that the referee made. But yeah, I'd like you to just with that particular case of sportsmanship and some of the controversy involved, if that's bad sportsmanship or part of the game or whatever argument you might want to make. I'd kind of like to focus on specifically having you think about how is sportsmanship different from a Christian perspective? How do we as Christians approach sportsmanship differently than non-Christians? I'm going to just kind of lay out some of the things that I think are unique, and I'm not trying to say that this is exhaustive and that I'm not missing some things. I think to the Christian, the ultimate thing in life is serving God. And because of that, the outcome of a sporting event is not ultimate. So I think when it comes to sportsmanship, the way that Christians approach it, or at least I think philosophically we should approach it, is that God has laid out moral standards for us very clearly in the Bible about, how we should live our lives. And sports are a part of life. They are not outside of our regular life. Again, there's different philosophies on this, but I think what I'm stating are generally sort of, the mainline Christian philosophical view. So those standards that are out there are to guide all of our lives, and sports is part of that. So our morals and the way we interact with each other should carry over into sport. And I really think that affects, or it should affect, the way Christians operate when it comes to sportsmanship. And you can probably guess, or you will be able to after reading the chapters in the text, which ones that having said what I just said, I would agree more with, and which ones I would agree less with. But because of these things, however you define success, in most cases, it comes down to winning. Those are not the ultimate goals. The ultimate goal for the Christian is to love God above all and our neighbor as ourselves. And so if we apply that to sports, I really think that that affects our sportsmanship and our view of sportsmanship and how we interact with our teammates and how we interact with the referees and the officials. So having said those things, as you watch that video or think back to watching the way that things transpired with Serena Williams in the U.S. Open last weekend, I'm gonna post a discussion question on the discussion board and hope to kind of explore that a little bit in light of a very specific example of something that happened, which these types of things happen from time to time and get a lot of attention in the media and so forth. And so I'm kind of curious to see what you folks think about that and how you can maybe apply some of these things from our chapter readings. All right, looking forward to the discussion.